And let's get into StatDCAT-AP. So first of all, let's do a quick reminder of the DCAT-AP ecosystem, where we start with the W3C DCAT on the top. Then we have the European DCAT-AP for data portals in Europe. And then there are many different domain-specific and national-specific application profiles, StatDCAT-AP being one of the domain-specific profiles. Now, the current StatDCAT-AP ecosystem contains not only DCAT-AP, but also the data quality vocabulary, the data cube vocabulary, both published by W3C. And from the statistical standards side, it is SDMX in version 2.1. So that's the current status. And what we'll try to achieve in our working groups is somehow make explicit the connection to DCAT-AP for high-value datasets, the new DCAT-AP 3.01 version, and possibly also the new SDMX standard. The current status of StatDCAT-AP 3 draft is that it is 2 documents. One is the application profile itself. That is what you can see on the left-hand side. And then there is the S1N namespace document on the right-hand side containing the definitions and URIs for all new concepts introduced within the scope of StatDCAT-AP, so classes and properties that are new and support the application profile. The current status of those documents is the same as last time, which means that all the texts that you can see there are basically a merge of texts from DCAT-AP 3.01 and the original texts from StatDCAT-AP 1.01 transferred as is, so they are in need of update. And the data model that you can see currently in StatDCAT-AP 3 draft is also a merge of DCAT-AP 3.01 and the StatDCAT-AP 1.01 extensions. So now would be the time to raise any issues regarding the existing extensions or new additions to be added within the work on this draft of the new version. So let's now have a look at the issues that we have in the GitHub repository for StatDCAT-AP, and we'll start with the issues of with the current extensions that we already have in StatDCAT-AP, and some of these issues lead to other issues and so on. So we'll go through them now. So last time we talked about the relevance of the identification of dimensions, attributes, and units of measurement on a DCAT dataset, whether those are still relevant. And the conclusion of the last working group is that yes, they are still relevant, but for their usage, more guidance is needed. So this resulted in 3 issues: one for dimension, one for attribute, one for statistical unit of measurement, where discussions are happening about these topics. Now, I'll highlight some of the points of the discussion in the topic. One of the points is that in the current data cube vocabulary published by the W3C, there is a namespace as SDMX dimension used for example dimensions such as age, time period, reference period, and so on. But it needs to be said in this case that the namespace is not an official SDMX standard namespace. It is based on an early version of SDMX concepts, and it is not being updated, and it is not being maintained under the current SDMX governance framework. So when looking for guidance about what values to use for indicating dimensions on a data set, these ones present in the data cube vocabulary should not be automatically considered as the right choice to be used everywhere. So that is more of a statement. The next note found in the discussions is that there is a current practice by Eurostat which is, however, not ideal, that the values of dimensions and attributes are URLs of XML files containing the whole code list of possible dimensions and attributes. So this is not ideal. Why? It is not ideal because we are in the RDF world, and we would ideally link to a SCOS concept representing and describing that particular dimension or attribute. However, this is not happening here exactly because the URL leads to an XML file download. So this could be done better, and again, is not to be taken as a good practice example. Another comment like this is from the attribute issue. And this one is that also the attributes listed in the SDMX attribute file linked from the DataCube vocabulary is a mix of metadata concepts and not core dimensions or measures. So again, the message is the same. These should not be automatically considered as the ones to be used in data cubes in connection with StatDCAT-AP. The other side of this comment is that there is currently no better way to represent those. So there is no standard representation of the SDMX attributes and dimensions in RDF, but the work on those is ongoing. So this is basically a statement: do not take those automatically as good practice. However, the good practice is coming and not yet available. Another piece of information found in the discussion is the question of connection between the dimensions, attributes, and units of measurement found in DataCube vocabulary DSDs and datasets, and the annotations that are prescribed by StatDCAT-AP on the level of DCAT dataset. So here we have an example of a StatDCAT-AP DCAT dataset record. And as we can see, it has 3 dimensions, 1 attribute, and 1 statistical unit of measurement. And when we take a look at a corresponding DataCube vocabulary dataset and data structure definition, we can see the same units of measurement, the same dimensions, and the same attribute. So the correspondence looks like this. So the dataset points to the data structure definition. Then the dimensions are the same in the DSD and in the StatDCAT-AP dataset instance, and the same goes for the attribute. And the same goes for the unit of measurement, which is stated on the cube dataset on the right-hand side and is copied over to the DCAT dataset. So this, in the discussions on GitHub, was identified as a good practice. So whenever a DSD is available, listing those dimensions and attributes and units of measurements, those URIs are the ones that should appear in the StatDCAT-AP dataset record. From the discussion, there was an issue identified, and that is that in the DSD, we also have the measure identified, and there is no corresponding concept to that in StatDCAT-AP currently. So an issue was raised whether there could be a new thing in StatDCAT-AP, the indication of the measure based on the measure in the DSD. So that is one new issue. And a connected second issue is that there is something called a statistical unit that could also be in interest or of interest to be indicated on the level of a StatDCAT-AP dataset. And there was an example provided, as you can see in the table. So now, for the first time, I would like to open discussion for these new 2 issues. So whether the measure property should be added to StatDCAT-AP, and the connected issue of the statistical unit, whether this would make sense to create a new property in StatDCAT-AP to represent the statistical unit. So are there any comments on this? Yes, David.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I mean, I have several comments, questions. Sorry, I should put my video on, right? But I don't know if this is going to start. Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I have several comments, questions. I guess I'll just start with this last one because it's on the screen. So a property for statistical unit, what's the difference between this and unit of measure?
It seems that the unit of measure is like years, centimeters, kilometers, and so on. And the statistical unit seems to be the concept about which we measure the values. So in the table, you can see that the statistical unit in this case can be a person or an enterprise or a municipality. So a higher level concept about which the data set is.
Okay, but that still sounds to me to be the same thing, at least how we're using it at the OECD. Okay, I mean, like, I guess if they are different things, then perhaps we could envisage that they would both be used at the same time, and then what would be the difference? So if your variable was, you know, well, okay, so age of a person, right? I guess the characteristic here would be what age, and then the statistical unit would be person, and then the unit of measure would be like years. Okay. Okay. But then I think in a lot of cases, maybe they will be the same thing, but yeah. It's just if we have statistical unit and unit of measure, I think that there may be some misinterpretation of it. So I'd still have to think about it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And feel free to comment on that issue, linked from the slide. It's issue number 23. And Magdalena?
Yes, hi everybody. Thanks for this good wrap up. What happened so far? Yes, exactly to that question. Sorry if you said that last time. For me, it's a bit a question if all this metadata structure we are building here and thinking about, if it's only about aggregated data, like the normal tables that we disseminate, or in Statistics Austria, why this is very much something my mind is very much into it, because we adapt DCAT for microdata, for internal microdata. And exactly that question that you just discussed here, if we need statistical unit and measure, when it comes to microdata, that's very relevant. Because with microdata, most of the time, one data set has a statistical unit for the whole microdata set, like persons, like companies, locations, journeys. So for the whole microdata set, the statistical unit is the same, but the measurement varies between the different variables. Like I do have something I do work a lot with. There is a data set with journeys. Each line represents one journey, and the different variables represent, for example, expenses for the journey. So the measurement for the expenses would be euro, or I don't know, whatever currency it is, but the lines would be the statistical unit. So when it comes to microdata, I think the differentiation between these two concepts is very relevant. Yes, that was my point.
Okay, thank you. And we always welcome examples. So please, if you could join the discussion in that issue and provide those examples, that would be great. And there is a comment from Bart whether this statistical unit could be considered a topic or a subject. From my point of view, it seems like that, but I'm not a statistician. So if anyone would like to comment on that. In that case, feel free to discuss in that. Okay, Harold, do you have a comment on this?
Well, yes, I think this is what is called unit type in GSIM, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then with respect to what Magdalena said, I often observe that there in microdata, there are often multiple unit types in a dataset. So for example, the journey, there might be a person who does the journey, or there might be information about the freight, the type of freight of the journey. So it's more complicated than just having one unit type in a dataset.
Perfect, thank you. And again, if you have examples of that, please contribute to that issue. And Marco Pellegrino, please.
Yes, just a quick clarification that it should be clear that the statistical unit and unit of measures are not the same concept, and also in our use, I would say in statistical use, because the unit of measure is something which is absolutely essential to understand which data are you trying to retrieve, because it's you need to understand if you're retrieving data in a number of person or a percentage points or something different, something strictly linked to the data is normally something which is within the structure definition in SDMX, normally as an attribute, sometimes even as a dimension, but I would say the normal use is the attribute, whereas statistical unit is something concerned more with the methodologies, what you're actually trying to measure. So it's a person, enterprise, as in the example, and it's something which is typically, at least in Eurostat use, in the reference metadata in the SEMS or in some other parts. So these are definitely two different conceptual things, and this is will also be clearer probably when we will release the SDMX ontology in which we are working, because these are at two completely different level in the SDMX model. Now, whether we need a new property for statistical unit, well, something for the moment I will leave to the discussion. It also depends on which is the use case for the StatDCAT. If it's just on retrieving information on where some data are, it might be just enough to have the unit of measure. If you want to know something more about the methodology, in that case you need the statistical unit, but it should be clear also in how the concept is described, that here we are not talking about the unit of measure, we are talking about statistical unit. In the STMX vocabulary, this should be made clear, but it's already clear, I think. And it should be clear also in what we describe in StatDCAT. But for the moment, I will still leave it to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. And Guillaume?
I agree with Marco, but just for clarification purposes, I would rather call the unit of measure a unit of measurement. I don't know if there are native speakers among us, but it seems to me that in English, the correct term is measurement, not measure. So, and that would avoid some confusion between the measure, the measurement, and the statistical unit, I guess.
Yep, thank you. Actually, the label of that property is statistical unit of measurement. What we see here, the stat unit measure is just a short part of the URI. So it is defined correctly. Maybe the shortening of the URI made it a bit confusing, but I don't know if it is worth changing the URI of that property for just this purpose. David?
Yeah, just a quick question for employment status of a person, right? So the statistical unit is person there. What would the unit of measure be?
Okay, so in this case, for instance, we can see the example of life expectancy of a person. So the units of measurement would be years. But if someone has a better explanation or example.
For employment status?
For employment status. Okay, employed, not employed.
So what would the unit of measure be?
Yeah, good question. And Guillaume, do you still want to say something?
So the unit of measurement is an attribute. So if you don't have any observation value, you don't have any unit of measurement. So if, for example, you are measuring the number of unemployed people, then it could be thousands or millions or just hundreds. That would be the unit of measurement. But you don't attach a unit of measurement to a categorical.
Okay, thank you, Magdalena.
Yes, also with respect to that topic, again, I would like to highlight the differentiation between when we look at aggregated data, where we have variables like indicators. In this case, I don't know, there's the number of unemployed, a percentage. The measurement would be a number or a percentage or things like that. When you come to microdata, what we realized is then the measurement only makes sense if it's a quantitative variable. For categorical variables, measurement doesn't make sense. So we just realized when we describe microdata, we have to leave measurement empty when we have categorical variables. Like you just said, unemployed, employed, it doesn't make sense to have a measurement additional there. Just when you make an indicator out of it, you can have the measurement too.
Yeah, I guess that's why in most of the example, the data cube is used because it's about aggregate data. If you look at some model that handles microdata, such as DDI or others, the unit of measurement is an attribute at the variable level. So and it's optional. So generally, as you said, you only attach it to quantitative variable, not to categorical or other.
Okay, thank you. And David? David, if you are saying something, you're muted. You have your hand raised. Okay, so let's continue. So thanks, and let's continue the discussion in the GitHub issue. The next thing that we came across in the discussions is the statistical unit of measurement. And here the question is, what values should be the ones recommended recommended in StatDCAT-AP? So there are several candidates. One of the candidates are the XML schema data types, so years, dates. Another candidate is the QDT, which is a rather large project with a list of different units of measurement. Then there are two EU vocabularies, for some purposes. And from those discussions also, it became clear that there is a request or a need for an official code list of units of measure based on the SDMX standard. However, this one is currently not available in RDF and SCOS. So this is something that can be discussed if someone has some opinion on this one. David, yep.
Yeah, I mean the code list, it's not available in SCOS or RDF or anything. In fact, we developed the guideline for formulating units of measure, but the code list is next. Okay, it's something that you know we want to work on in SDMX. We've just got to kind of get the working group together. So and it will be very likely a kind of core list with a kind of convention with which to extend it. Okay, because units of measure, there are very many. At the OECD, we have like a harmonized list that we use for all of our data, but it's the code list which evolves the most, with the greatest frequency. I think we're up to kind of version 24 or something now. So yeah, it's important that there's like a core code list, but also a convention, a way in which it can be extended. And it would be great, if we can, somehow have this across standards. So yeah, just to say that that doesn't exist now, but it's something that we'd like to start this year. Thanks.
Okay, this is good to hear. And if you comment along these lines in that issue, that would be great, so that the community knows what to expect and maybe when and maybe how to get involved.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, this is my first time I've participated in this like task force, so I've got no idea where these things are. I mean, it'd be nice if someone is just adding these things to like a board or the repository that you maintain, because I don't even know if I've got access, and I'm not taking notes. So, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, there is a StatDCAT-AP repository in GitHub. It is open to everyone, and these issues are identified there. Maybe someone could post a link into the chat so that you can have a look and contribute there. Yeah, the link is already in the chat. Okay. Any other comments on this one? Okay, moving on. So connected to the units of measurement is another issue that we have identified. And that is that, okay, let's say that we have a list of units of measurement to be used. And some of those units already naturally contain a multiplier, such as kilometer, decameter, and so on, but some do not. And in the statistical data sets, what happens is that sometimes the numbers, the measured numbers, are multiplied somehow, and this information is currently missing in StatDCAT-AP. This information about the multiplier, if for some reason the number is not 1 year, but 5 years or something like that. And this information is missing now. So the proposal here is to also add support for indication of multipliers used in the observations. Again, I'm opening the floor to discussion on this topic. David, yep.
Yeah, so So we separate this in SDMX, okay, and have done since the start. Really, we have a unit multiplier concept. The convention in our unit of measure code list is we never put the multiplier information. Okay, the units of measure, yes, sometimes, and this is quite arbitrary. You know, we have like the kilometer, I don't know if we have decameter, but you know, centimeter, etc. So we do have various variations, and it's not consistent. But we never say what the multipliers are in the unit of measure code list itself. We have this in a separate concept called unit multiplier. So yeah, and I kind of recommend that approach as well here, because otherwise you may have like a big mixture of things going into the unit of measure, like I'd say enumeration, you know, and it's difficult to pass as well if you have like, you know, multipliers in the same code list. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Do I interpret this correctly as support for something like this from your side?
Well, I can't see the I can't see what the proposal is. I mean, it says what the problem is, but it doesn't say to separate the multipliers to a separate concept. But if that is the proposal, then yes, I support that.
Yeah, that is the proposal. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other comments, opinions? Okay, moving on. So the next topic we already touched upon last time is the quality annotation. So the conclusion last time was, yes, quality annotation of a dataset is still relevant. No, there is no known usage, for instance, in the European Data Portal, but it is still relevant. It should be aligned with the information available in DCAT on the quality information guidelines. I've checked, and that section in DCAT is actually basically saying use the data quality vocabulary and gives an example, and that's about it. So if we are going to support this in StatDCAT-AP, we need to have a better guidance on how to use the data quality vocabulary, including examples. In the issue regarding this quality annotation, there is already a link to examples by INSA, and what is missing there is the connection of the StatDCAT-AP dataset to the entity representing this this annotation. So that could be added. From the discussion, it is clear that somehow the usage of SIMS would be required here. At least the concepts contained in SIMS should somehow be linked from the data quality vocabulary quality annotation. So, any comments on data quality annotation besides what we can see here and what is already in the issue? If not, please join the discussion. It's issue number 10. And the next one was the number of data series. This was concluded as still relevant, but examples and maybe a refined definition is needed, because right now it is just a number with a definition saying that it is a Cartesian product of the dimensions, excluding time, which was pointed out in that issue. So, for instance, in the old original StatDCAT-AP, there is an example that you can see. So a data set could contain data for 3 regions with 3 values for each region. and therefore the number of series is 3, while the number of observations is 9. So this is a nice example, but what we can then find is hundreds of thousands here as well, and then it is a bit challenging to interpret. And from the discussions on the relevance of this property, we can see suggestions to alter the definition to the actual number of time series in the data set, but then also a number of comments saying that it is quite difficult to give much value to that count. It doesn't make sense for each intersection, the Cartesian product, and it doesn't give much information, it is not essential, and so on. So it seems that still there is a possibility of actually dropping this property from StatDCAT-AP unless we find a good use case supported by an example and a good definition of what this number of data series actually should be, how it should be computed, and how it should be interpreted consistently. Because right now this is missing. And it is not convincing that actually it makes sense to have such a property. So if you have some case supporting this one, please have it in or place it in the issue. It is issue number 11 in the StatDCAT-AP repository. The next issue that we discussed was with the visualization distribution type. So currently in StatDCAT-AP, there is a special property giving a type to a distribution, and especially it is pointed out that the type could be visualization. And there was already a discussion that this might not be the best modeling approach according to DCAT-AP because of multiple things, one of them being that the distributions of one data set should contain the same data, maybe in different serializations, so a visualization doesn't fit. And also, there could be alternative modeling approaches to connecting a visualization to a distribution of a data set. For instance, it could be connected as a documentation, or there is a proposal to create a data reuse class, which would be more generic. It would basically represent something that is not a data set, but it is a reuse of a data set or possibly data sets such as visualizations, dashboards, reports, and so on. There is no support found for this currently, but it could be added either to StatDCAT-AP or maybe somewhere else. So that is one of the proposals found in the discussion thread. Again, if you have something to say about this, feel free to express yourself in that issue. And then there is an issue that was already found to be present for StatDCAT-AP 101, so 10 years ago, and that is guidance on what is exactly the relationship of DK dataset, DK distribution, and the data cube dataset, and a data structure definition defined there. This is because there is a need identified to somehow connect the StatDCAT-AP dataset record to a DSD, the data structure definition, but it is not clear at the moment how exactly this connection should happen. So on the input here, we have the definition of a DCAT-AP dataset, which is a conceptual entity that represents the information published, DCAT-AP distribution, its physical embodiment in a particular format. On the other side, we have a data cube dataset, which is a collection of statistical data that corresponds to a defined structure, and the definition of a DSD, which defines the structure of one or more datasets and allows us to define the structure once and then reuse it for each publication in the series. Here it is presumed that there are more datasets compliant with one data structure. And now the question is, how exactly should these two be connected? So on the left-hand side, we have the variant where we have a DCAT dataset, and at the same time, it is the cube dataset. and therefore it naturally links to a DSD through the property already present in the data cube vocabulary. There is an effect that, for instance, this means that there is one DSD applicable to all the distributions of this data set, because it is specified on the dataset level. There is no other way of distinguishing to which distribution it should apply. On the right-hand side, a similar example, but in this case, we would say that one of the distributions of the dataset is actually the cube dataset and connected to the data structure definition. And there is also a third approach, and that is that none of those two examples are correct, and there is some other relationship between a DCAT dataset and a data cube dataset and the DSD, and therefore it needs to be linked using a new property. But then the question remains whether from DCAT dataset or a DCAT distribution. So there is a specific issue for that, but we have some time to discuss this if someone has something to say about this. David? Yep.
Yeah, so the relationship here is between like the DCAT datasets to the DSD, well, in SDMX, right? I mean, would it be more to an SDMX data flow? Because you know, you may want to expose several corners of your cube, you know, which is defined by the DSD, but and so create several data flows on your cube, your DSD, which one of those could be like employment by sex and age. You know, another one could be, well, employment by some other breakdowns, right? And you know, and others as well. So therefore, you know, would the data set be more related to the data flow, or is this a completely separate issue?
Okay, so even today we'll have another issue on how to express the relationships between, let's say, a primary data set and the derived ones. So that might be something along the lines that you are saying. Here, it is more like we have a static data set with a defined DSD. We have the StatDCAT-AP metadata record about the data set. And now we are wondering how exactly to connect that StatDCAT-AP record to the DSD. And we know that the DSD is linked from the cube dataset. And what we are trying to determine is whether the cube dataset corresponds to the DCAT dataset, to the DCAT distribution, or neither, and needs to be connected in some other way. Bert?
Yeah, to add for the colleagues here on the table, the question here as well is to harmonize with the DCAT ecosystem. So where you see as in the green, and this is the topic of discussion, in DCAT, there's a difference between what we call a dataset, which is really a conceptual idea, and all the properties, the values of that apply to all distributions. So it's a generalistic idea and the structure on it. You can use that mechanism. And while if you talk about an individual exchange or a downloadable entity of that data set, we call it a distribution. In that case, you have maybe a certain particular information. For we download it in a CSV or in a picture or something like this. These are exactly the same data, but in a different format, and that's the level of the distribution. So you have to think in this layer, and that's the challenge. And then you see that we have to call something maybe in one vocabulary a data set,
while it is in DCAT, maybe we call it a distribution. So this is kind of defining the level of granularity question to set alternative. The reason why we bring this to the table, because we want to align that an external DCAT-AP user has a similar feeling and experience with the statistical data sets as well as the other ones.
Okay, thanks. So any opinions on this one? Okay, if not, feel free to think about that and express your opinion in issue number 21 here. And with this, we have reached the break, but before that, yes?
Yeah, Jacob, there was a question from Cor, and maybe we can take that one first in the chat on the quality label. So maybe we can take that before the break. And so.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is about the relationships of data quality between StatDCAT-AP and health DCAT-AP. Cor, can you elaborate on that?
Yes. I'm struggling with the video. I'm working, I'm not a statistical expert, I'm from geodomain, but I'm working for the AHDS, where data quality is addressed by the Quantum Project. And this is also a European initiative, and it will derive a quality label, which is mandatory to be added to the health DCAT extension. And my remark in the chat was for most that maybe you can look to the same program and the same data quality label to use it in the stat data quality property. So I would suggest don't delete the label or the property, but look into the discussion which is currently active in Europe about the quality quantum label. That was mainly my remark. And also the explanation from that about the distribution in the data set. I know the chat, I'm entering it now in the chat. I support your comment about distribution and data set also there. So it was a helpful explanation you did. So that was my general remark. And now I have to leave because I have another meeting. So thanks for now, and I will join the next meeting again. So thank you very much, and bye next time.
Thank you, bye.
Okay.
Okay, so this brings us to a break. Let's take 5 minutes and meet here again at 11:05. Okay, welcome back after the break. It's 11:05. Let's continue. So the next group of issues is regarding the existing StatDCAT-AP extensions in new contexts. The new contexts being mainly the DCAT-AP2 data service and the DCAT-AP3 dataset series. So regarding data services, the situation was quite clear and straightforward. So the conclusion of the last working group was, yes, data services definitely exist in the statistical domain and they are relevant. We want them in StatDCAT-AP. We also need them for high-value data sets, the statistical ones. But the existing annotations that we have on StatDCAT-AP datasets should stay at datasets, and no new annotations are required for data services. So this was the conclusion from the data services discussion. And a more interesting case is the dataset series. So here the conclusion was, yes, dataset series is definitely useful to the statistical domain. And there is, of course, need for guidance how to exactly use dataset series for statistical datasets, especially when to create a new series, what to annotate on the dataset level, and what to annotate at the dataset series level, and so on. There was also a need identified for the support for nested dataset series, which is something not directly present in DCAT-AP, but a use case was identified for StatDCAT-AP. So this is something that will probably make it into StatDCAT-AP. And again, guidance on nested dataset series is needed to be expressed in StatDCAT-AP. In the discussion about usage of dataset series in the statistical domain, which, by the way, is issue number 13 in the repository, one of the topics identified was whether metadata present on each dataset in the dataset series could be moved to the level of the dataset series and then not be expressed at the level of individual dataset, as you can see in the slide. And this goes against the good practice in the DCAT-AP ecosystem, because in DCAT-AP, each dataset should be fully described, and there is no expectation that some metadata about a dataset should be found somewhere else, for instance, on the dataset series. So the answer here is no. All the metadata of a dataset, even a dataset in a dataset series, should be present on that dataset. But the question is still open on what annotations it makes sense to have on the level of dataset series, and what is then the connection between the values stated on the dataset series level and the values of the annotations stated on the dataset level of each dataset in the series. So this is more a note on what the expectations are in the DCAT-AP ecosystem, because this comment then surfaced multiple times in the discussions. And then we have a first example of a nested dataset series from the issue. And here we can see that the dataset series somehow corresponds to an indicator that contains other dataset series, which are groups of datasets according to different periodicity of updates. So, and then the individual datasets belong to the dataset series of the appropriate frequency, and those dataset series are then members of the indicator dataset series. Now, I'm not sure if, Dorothea, you want to maybe explain some more on this example?
Yes, of course. So this is how we would model the nested dataset series in our institution. As we have, as you can see, different identifiers for example, the S3RO0O. That's how these are the identifiers that we give to our indicators. In our experience, we are suggesting to structurize it like this. So the top level of the dataset series would represent the indicator, which in this case is the unemployed. Then the dataset series would group datasets by periodicity, for example, the annual unemployment rate, then the quarterly rate, and the DCAT dataset instances would represent the concrete statistical datasets. So this is the conceptual organization of what we have in mind. Of course, it's not flawless. So the indicator in this is DCAT dataset series. The periodicity groups are also DCAT dataset series, and then actual tables or cubes are DCAT dataset. We think that it works well with indicator discovery because in our experience, as we are creating the new portal, we see that users often search for the indicator first. So, for example, unemployed. So then the navigation we think would also be clearer in this sense. So that's of course one way of putting it. So that's how I would expand on our example. Sorry, I forgot the word.
Okay, thank you. Just a note on that. Sometimes it is good to separate the point of view of a data portal implementer and how the data is then structured in a database, because those can be two different things. For instance, here there is the DCAT series member, which is the inverse property to DCAT in series, which is otherwise preferred and also present in the example. So here, maybe it is used to indicate how the navigation in a data portal could be eased, but it would be eased anyway with the DCAT in series, just with a different query to the database.
Okay, thank you for the note.
Okay, any opinions or comments? Yes, Domenico.
Hi everyone, I have a question based on the concept of linked open data, RDF and so on. And my question is if dataset series in this format is browsing from an automatic agent, a machine. In this way is clear for human and can be browsed because we know how data are organized, but I don't know if dataset series need to be typed for give a more self-explainable the meaning of a dataset series to the machine. This is the question I have.
Okay, and what would be the types that you suggest?
It depends a lot from the type of data you are linked, and based on the concept, this needs to be inquired, need to be talked about and think if there is some choice to reach this goal. This is a point of view. What do you think about?
Well, I'm still not sure what would be the types, because and how they would be distinct from the annotations that we already have, such as topic and the dimensions, the attributes, and so on. So what would be the extra information needed here? Bert?
Just I needed to add here to the discussion on this one. If it's right that Domenico is suggesting that not always dataset series need to be created, and that this somehow can be derived from by an agent or an intelligent agent from the existing metadata. Is that correct interpretation? So that that was what popped up in this case.
If I can add something more, for example, taking a look to the documentation of the DCAT at high level, DCAT 3.0, DCAT dataset series can be used for split a big dataset in different parts because it's too complex to manage the dataset in one only that in data distribution in only one distribution. Then different criteria are always addressed at high level, at the DCAT level, and then this already suggests us that some more information can be used to help not only human, but for linked open data, I think 99% of the users are agents who browse the open data, and then in this way, it's not clear what they have to do with the dataset they discover, searching and following the link between a dataset and a dataset series, because it's sure it's useful but it needs to be expressed some sort of criteria who discover better what the criteria the different datasets are joined together. This is only a point of view, but how this needs to be discussed.
Okay, just to add here.
For example, another things, we can join together the census data. Census data happen typically every 10 years, and run after run, then 10 years after 10 years. They can change a lot in questions, in variables, but it can be useful when you discover one dataset concerning a census to discover the other, even if the data structure can change, variable can change, unit measure can change, but it's a useful information for who browse the data into the portal or into the catalog.
Yeah.
Fine.
Indeed, I think here we agree. I only wanted to add that DCAT-AP doesn't enforce you to create dataset series. So it's always an act, a conscious act of creating it and helping the portals, these agents, to better find the information.
Okay, thanks. Magdalena?
Yes, thank you for the example of nested dataset series. It seems to me relevant, and I can imagine very well that there are several examples where things like that pop up. My actual comment is more a question that came up to me with respect to dataset series. As Statistical Institute, we very often publish preliminary data, and then we revise it, and at some point it will be final. Please help me out if there is another way to indicate this series. Would be that dataset series would this also be the concept that we use for such a thing? Was this already discussed? If yes, then sorry, I didn't see it.
So is the question whether, in your case, you have the preliminary data and then the final data, so those are two different data sets. They are on the same topic, clearly. And you're asking whether you should basically do a dataset series out of those based on the same topic?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, the answer is it is up to you. If it makes sense to group those data sets, then feel free to do so. Yeah. Okay, David?
Yeah, so maybe just a very basic question. So in dataset series. I mean, can you describe like any partial key in a data set using dataset series?
Well, right now we are discussing whether to include dataset series, which answer was yes. And the follow-up question is, what do we want to say about that series? And there we do not have an answer. So if you think that this would be beneficial to indicate about a dataset series, then it is open for discussion, basically.
Yeah. No, I just wondered if you know, the term like dataset series meant it's like the full key in the dataset, or if it can actually be a partial key. So yeah, that was it.
Okay, so yeah, I do not really understand what you mean by a full key in a dataset, but maybe someone else does and want to react.
Yes, yeah, as per the DCAT definition, it's a full key. So the partial key are not handled as such. So if you want to say something about partial keys, then you have to dig deeper and, for example, point to what the data could call slice keys, which basically correspond to the SDMX partial keys.
So sorry, Guillaume, I couldn't hear all of that. But I heard you say that this is like it's the full key only. It's like, you know, all of the kind of dimensions in the data set, right?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to kind of you know, describe something related to only like a subset of the dimensions, then it would be something else. I didn't hear if you said anything about that, but we can leave it there. Thanks.
Okay, and Guillaume, do you have any other comments? Because you have your...
Yeah, just two remarks. The first one is about the nested data series. I was looking at the DCAT and DCAT-AP specification yesterday, and it seems to me that this is not something that is handled currently by the model, the data model. So there is no self-reference between data series. So I don't think that we can currently implement the data series in such a way. And a second point is about the example given for census data. I guess that in this case, if we want a way to group different data series about census, we can use a predicate such as the DCAT sim and point to a concept census, and that would allow machine or people to infer and discover quite easily all the data series that are linked to a particular theme or concept, such as census.
Okay, regarding the remark on dataset series, DCAT-AP doesn't explicitly prohibit having dataset series in a dataset series, but there is no identified use case and clear guidance on how to do that. So it is left to the profiles. In StatDCAT-AP, we have identified a use case for that, so we can make it happen. So there is no issue regarding this.
Sure, because it seems to me that the range of the DCAT in series, for example, a predicate is a DCAT dataset, not a DCAT data series. Dataset series. Sorry.
Yeah, so here we are coming into an issue that, in DCAT itself, a dataset series is a subclass of dataset, so that's why the DCAT in series has this range. In DCAT-AP, it was kind of decided to treat dataset series more as a group than as a dataset. That's why the guidance doesn't provide much information about the nested dataset series there. But again, there is nothing prohibiting us from doing the nested dataset series in StatDCAT-AP. And any comments to the second point? And Jan, do you still want to say something more?
No, thanks, I'm done.
Okay. Okay, any other remarks on the nested series? Yes, Magdalena?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I'm too much into microdata, but I just try to think of an example if this works for aggregated data too, but a good example is microdata related. What do I do with hierarchical data sets? I guess also when it comes to sensors, you have households and persons, or people who do a journey and journeys. All these data sets which are connected with the help of a key, and they're somehow in a hierarchical order. Would this be also covered by this nested data set concept that you suggest here?
Okay, from my point of view, it is possible, but hard to say without seeing the example. So if you could provide that in the issue, that would be great. And maybe Dorothea has some more comments on this.
Of course, it would be good to see an example, but I think for hierarchical datasets, the safest approach is to use dataset series for the hierarchy or grouping, and then use the dataset for the actual publishable datasets, and only put metadata at the higher level when it is shared generally by all children. So we would have like the top level broad groupings such as indicator, domain, or theme, then the middle levels which would act as subdivisions like periodicity, geography, population group, and then the concrete data sets. Maybe that would be a good approach, but I think I could say something more if I saw the example in GitHub, and then I could think about it more.
Okay, Bert?
I would like to draw some attention to the notion hierarchical here, difference between visualization on a portal versus what is in the data, the metadata description. So you can, DCAT has a lot of ways to expressing relationships between data sets and distributions and other entities. Dataset series is one of them. And the hierarchy that you see here on the left-hand side could be created as well based on a mixture of other relationships and dataset series. So just not only focusing that a hierarchy is only a hierarchy of nested dataset series. I would leave some freedom in the thinking here. What is the best way to do? What is the most appropriate way? What is leads to the minimal effort of documenting your metadata and the maximum efforts on a smart engine to do a query to create this view. So that would be helping us, I think, for everyone.
Okay, thanks. There was another hand raised, but no longer. Yeah. Guillaume?
Yeah. Just to say that it seems to me that this question is very much related to the discussion in the issue 18 about derived tables. So I guess this has been partially addressed in this thread.
Okay, thanks. Yes, we'll get to this issue in a moment. But yes, there is a related issue on how to describe a dataset and a derived dataset and the relationship between those two. Okay, any other comments on the usage of nested dataset series? And Guillaume, do you still want to say something?
No, sorry, I forgot to.
Yeah. Okay. So the next issue that we came across, but there is no discussion on it, so I'm just pointing it out, is whether variables should be, besides being indicated at the dataset level, whether they should also be indicated at the distribution level. So there is an issue on that. If you want to contribute to this discussion, it's issue number 17. And then another statement, more of, is that there is an issue saying that it would be good to also include this classification of statistical activities as a tagging mechanism for datasets, similarly to the DCAT theme. This classification is maintained by the United Nations Statistical Division, I want to say. It is not yet available in RDF, but it is something that should be a work in progress. So there's more to know about this activity. And yes, now we are finally at the issue 18, which is regarding the relationship between multidimensional datasets and derived tables. So here we have two definitions. A dataset, sometimes called a detailed dataset, corresponds to the full multidimensional table as produced and maintained by statistical units used to store detailed data and full-time series. And then we have a derived table, which is a derived dataset, typically created from a detailed dataset by selecting only a subset of dimensions. These tables are simplified representations intended for dissemination and visualization. They usually have their own identifier different from the source dataset and reference the original detailed dataset from which they are derived. And the issue is how to represent this relationship between the two datasets in StatDCAT-AP. And currently, there are two suggestions on how to do this. One is a simpler one using the source property, so pointing from the derived dataset to the original one, so from the table to the dataset using the source property, and then a more elaborate one using a qualified relation, where the relationship, the exact relationship, can be further specified. So again, it points from the derived table to the original dataset, but it is qualified, and there is the role, which can indicate what is the exact relationship of the derived dataset to the original one. So are there any comments on this, on top of what is already discussed in the issue?
Yes, in our opinion, as we commented in GitHub, we think that using DCT source may already be sufficient for many cases here without introducing any additional modeling patterns. Because if a derived table is created for a more detailed multidimensional dataset, the table can still be described as its own dataset with its own identifier and title and metadata and distributions, while the relationship to the original dataset can be expressed using the source. This seems like a simpler, more understandable way, at least for us. And we also see an advantage in keeping the model more light at this stage. So we would suggest not introducing a separate modeling pattern. And if needed, the guidance could simply clarify that both the detailed multidimensional dataset and the derived dissemination table may be modeled as datasets, and the derivation between them can be indicated using source. But of course, it's only a suggestion, and maybe others have different opinions.
Yes, Christine?
Yes, in the GitHub issue, Guillaume raised an important point. So some derived table may be the result of some transformation process. So I think we may have to document the provenance of the derived table. So yes, document the activity, or specify that is with the prof was derived from the primary data set.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Bert, do you want to react?
Sure. Just this is a question to the community. Is there, as Dorothea already mentioned, need for just a simple, and this will cover 95% of the cases, source lineage, or is there a need for the full lineage to be done? And then we have to express, and there are many ways. One of them is on the right-hand side on the screen. But there's as well W3C prof, which can be used as well into it. And then, so just, yeah, I don't know how far yet to go. That would be good to have this in, let's say, in confirmation in the issue. The kind of simple approach is sufficient for now. Or do we have to work towards a more detailed lineage approach?
Yeah.
If I can, yes, I agree with Bert, and I agree with Guillaume that derived tables can be modeled as the dataset, and that provenance should be expressed separately via, for example, source or prov was derived from, or prov activity. However, be cautious about modeling multidimensional datasets generally. So for me, the more general pattern is to have source multidimensional dataset, for example, modeled as DCAT dataset, then the derived table, which could also be a DCAT dataset. And the relation between them could be source or, like Bert said, provenance. So I would also agree with keeping it simpler.
Okay, thanks. David?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the terms that are used here, because I mean, yeah, okay, we use like different terms in SDMX, but that doesn't matter. You know, it's like a data flow is I think what you're talking about, a table here, but it's just it says like a table is a derived data set, but isn't it more a partial data set? Because I mean, if you think about derivation, then it could be, I mean, it says to me that it could actually be something else, you know, you derive from a data set, but what is meant here, that you're using a subset of the dimensions. So it's like a part of the data set. And also using the term table. So I mean, you know, most of our data flows are represented as tables, but couldn't these be represented as like charts as well? So therefore, if you're gonna have this partial data set but represented not as a table, would you then need to have like a different term here? So yeah, just wondering if there's some issues here with how the thing is described, and because how it's described here is kind of making its way into DCAT. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, Christine, do you want to comment on that?
Yes. So yes, we must make the difference between derived table or derived chart as the process of transformation, and the partial table as a subset of dimensions.
Well, so this is not a transformation, right? This is like some kind of definition that you'd use to say what is the partial data set. You know, it's not like you're deriving from the data set and creating something else. You're just like subsetting it. So therefore, you know, I think what is meant here is it's not a table, it's a derived data set. I think I've lost everybody.
Maybe everyone's thinking. So in the meantime, Guillaume, do you want to contribute to this?
Not to this point, specific point, but just want to respond to Bert's question. I actually just did it in the chat, but in my view, this is not the main purpose of a data catalog to expose full lineage of data sets. So I would stick to the simple case and not dig to not dive into complex lineage processes.
Okay, thanks. So that would be support for the simple source alternative here. Okay, so let's have a more detailed discussion in the issue 18. And as we are nearing the end of the webinar, we just have a note here.
So if I could just say, you know, on the last point, yeah, I think it's really useful to make this distinction. Okay, you know, if you need to say, you know, okay, this is like the full cube, okay, and then you have this way of disseminating part of it. I mean, this use case, you know, I certainly agree that it exists because we do it all of the time, and I'm sure other agencies, they do it as well. So yeah, definitely we need to make that distinction. It's just the way that it's termed here, I just think it's got issues. So yeah, maybe if we could come back to that, or the, you know, the group comes back to that with this in mind. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thanks for the clarification. Okay, so a note on StatDCAT-AP, the statistical data sets and high value data sets. So this is just to point out that statistical data sets are one of the categories of the high value data set implementing regulation. So anyone publishing statistical data sets should take a look at this high value data sets implementing regulation, specifically the annex, where statistical data sets are defined, or high value data sets from the statistical domain are defined as we can see in the slide. So using those tables, and those basically tell us what should be in the statistical data sets that fall under the high value data sets implementing regulation. So for instance, in the industrial production data set, or volumes of sales by activity and so on, and what is required. So this basically every publisher of such data sets should be aware of this regulation and make sure that StatDCAT-AP provides everything together with DCAT-AP high-value data sets, everything that is necessary to properly describe using metadata those high-value data sets. Especially, I would like to draw your attention to the point 4.2, which contains the additional arrangements for the publication and reuse of those data sets. So it specifically demands that there is a license specified, which is at most or basically less restrictive than CC by 4. So CC by 4 is the most restrictive license allowed for high-value data sets. Then it requires representation of the data set in an open format as a API and a bulk download, which means that we need support for both data services representing the APIs and the bulk download represented by the distribution in DCAT. Then there is a requirement for good metadata, which is linked to StatDCAT-AP, and also an online documentation describing the structure of and semantics of the data, which is basically a link to a data structure definition. And then there is the point D says that quality controlled vocabularies should be used. So this is basically drawing your attention to this implementing regulation to make sure that we have everything we need in StatDCAT-AP to support a proper description of the statistical data sets and their metadata. This is a point to DCAT-AP HVD, which in combination with StatDCAT-AP should be used to describe statistical high-value data sets. And all the restrictions or requirements imposed by the high-value datasets implementing regulation are expressed in DCAT-AP HVD. So there it should be clear that bulk download corresponds to distributions, data services to APIs. There is a requirement that an API, a data service, has a contact point and a quality of service documentation. There is a need for persistent identifiers. So the data sets and the data services described by StatDCAT-AP need to have persistent identifiers. And the licenses need to be dereferenceable, identifiable by IRIs. And if they are not using the EU vocabularies licenses named authority list, then they should be at least mapped to it so that it is clear that the licenses are less permissive, less restrictive, than CC by 4. So this is about high-value data sets. And this brings us to the next steps. So last month, we had a working group webinar, the first one. Now we are finishing the second one. And there is a third one planned for April. And then the work on the new draft of StatDCAT-AP will be done, and a draft should be published before summer for public review. The current draft, as indicated at the beginning of the webinar, is available in GitHub in the form of the two documents, the application profile and the namespace document. Please provide your feedback in the GitHub issues in the StatDCAT-AP repository. And now it is time for any other business, any other questions.
I do have a very basic one.
Yep.
Will you send out the slides soon?
Yes, the slides and the recording and the meeting minutes will be available, and in the end linked from the draft, as is the first working group already. David?
Yeah, so At the start of the meeting, you talked about things are aligned with SDMX 2.1. Of course, I'm very much on the SDMX side of things. I didn't see any issues related to SDMX 3 and the what's been added to the information model there. Now maybe a lot of things that don't need to be added, to DCAT, but something like the fact that we can have multiple measures, and I think we talked about things related to the observation value, in a series. I mean, do you have like an open issue to discuss what changes may actually come from, in evolving DCAT, considering what is now available in SDMX 3?
Yes, thank you for the comment. There is an issue for the alignment with the statistical standards, and this is one of those. So in the repository, there is an issue for that, and discussion on this should be the main part of the next webinar. Okay, the last call for any other comments or questions. Doesn't seem like it. In that case, thank you for attending the second working group, and see you next month for the third one, and hopefully see you in GitHub for the discussions on the issues that we talked about today. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.